A Russian rock band performing for a Russian audience. And yet, we're in Belgrade, Serbia. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, many thousands of Russians have moved to Serbia, with new arrivals every day. In early 2022, Kati was living in Moscow, and 2 years later, she is a resident of Belgrade.
Well, basically, I came to Belgrade to finish my studies in audio production. I was earlier enrolled in a university in Moscow, and because of the war, it kind of stopped giving us the program that was promised initially. So me and a few of my friends moved here to finish our studies.
Estimates suggest that the number of Russians in Serbia ranges from 300,000 to 600,000, making up to 5 to 10% of the population. Earlier in the war, these young professionals, many with young families, mostly sought refuge in Central Asia, the Caucasus, or Turkey. However, since 2023, some countries have tightened their immigration policies, whereas Serbia has simplified its procedures. Ilya is a prime example. Initially seeking refuge in Kazakhstan to avoid the risk of conscription, this IT engineer struggled to find work. He recalls his arrival in Belgrade.
The first reaction from people at the hotel and restaurant was, "Where are you from?" "From Russia." "Wow." We were pleasantly surprised. Later, though, a waiter in a restaurant said, "Russia, Putin." We replied, "Well, no, we're against the war." He seemed disappointed, but he still served us.
Once in Serbia, Ilya launched a different kind of business.
We are receiving more and more inquiries from our compatriots about how things are organized here, what to do, and how to start a new life. People want to live in a normal world with normal values, enroll their children in school, settle down, and build their lives. That's the main motivation for those who want to specifically move to Serbia.
Ilya and his wife Maria now advise other Russians who are searching for the ideal country to settle in. They help them with sorting residency permits, housing, and business creation.
If you've arrived in Serbia and don't yet know what activity to pursue but need sole business owner status just to obtain a residency permit, you need to apply in person at the business registered agency and pay a fee of about €8. A decision will be made immediately to suspend your activity, and from that point on, your expenses will be zero.
Their advice on how to obtain Serbian residency is being shared with many Russians who are seeking to build a new life in the country.
I'm currently uploading our new video to Instagram. We manage several social media accounts and recently started creating video content. People really appreciate video formats nowadays, which is why we have our star, our expert, while I stay behind the scenes managing all the promotion.
These new exiles are fleeing Putin's regime. But there's a paradox. The Serbian government, like most of its population, is pro-Kremlin. However, there's no friction with the Russians. Even the most radical Serbs, who still occasionally organize pro-Russian demonstrations, accept these contradictions.
Normal people flee war, and young Russians are no exception, especially those who are IT professionals. They've found refuge here and feel at home. It's not an issue.
Today is shopping day for Katya. Since she doesn't speak Serbian, this grocery store has an advantage. The employees and the products are Russian.
Добрый день. Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте. Медовик есть?
Да, есть коржи для медовика.
Спасибо.
Пожалуйста, проходите.
I don't usually go to these stores on a regular basis. It's more of a kind of when you look for something specific or you want a specific treat that kind of reminds you of your childhood, for example. When I first came here almost 2 years ago, there were quite a few already Russian existing businesses like stores and restaurants and bars. But since then, the amount has grown, so it's not like they're stopping there.
Meanwhile, Ilya has a business meeting in downtown Belgrade.
You see here, there are 3 Russian cafes at this intersection. The first, the second, and the third. On this corner, not yet. There are also Russian cafes on the lower street and a restaurant further down.
He is meeting with Denis, a Russian IT professional turned real estate agent, and Dobrica, his Serbian business partner. Ilya is looking for housing for his clients. Recently arrived from Georgia, Denis is enjoying his new life in the city.
Belgrade really resembles the city where I grew up, Rostov-on-Don. It's very similar, and I feel good here, whether it's the climate or the friendliness of the people. People are really kind and welcoming. The environment here is really nice. The conditions for doing business are also good, which is why we decided to stay here.
Now we are at Belgrade waterfront, a new upscale neighborhood in the capital and a favorite spot for Russian newcomers.
Apartments like those in Belgrade waterfront are very similar to the good, simple apartments rented out by agents in Moscow or Minsk, St. Petersburg, Ekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, and other big Russian cities. That's why buyers who come to Belgrade and discover the offers here feel like they're moving into their own apartment.
This apartment is priced at 300,000 euros, but Denis can offer properties for all budgets, from 20,000 euros for a small country house to luxury properties worth $1 million. And there's more. 2 Russian investors are building luxury villas with pools just 20 minutes from Belgrade. The prices of these properties remains undisclosed. These Russians, coming from a country with a higher standard of living, have driven up real estate prices, affecting many Serbian tenants. Dragana studies Russian and gives private lessons to the newcomers wishing to learn Serbian. But she has also paid a price.
2 years ago, this small apartment's rent increased by 100 euros overnight due to the arrival of Russians, jumping from 350 to 450 euros. A close friend had to choose between leaving her apartment or accepting a rent double what it used to be, which wasn't feasible for a Serbian student, so she moved out.
Dragana also recalls how Serbs initially reacted to the arrival of the Russians.
Before the Russians arrived, Serbs had this image of Russia as a sort of paradise on earth. Serbs and Russians have been close for years. There was a shock when Serbs realized that the Russians arriving didn't have a good image of Russia themselves. It was a big surprise.
This is understandable. The Russian community is clearly opposed to Putin. This footage from Belgrade on March 17th shows voting during the Russian presidential election. Voters queued for 4 hours. The result, 10.8% for Putin, his lowest score abroad compared to 88% in Russia. However, openly opposing Putin isn't always safe. In September, during this protest, only a few dozen people showed up. The links between Russian and Serbian intelligence services are strong, and some Russian families have been expelled from Serbia. The message is clear: settle freely but avoid politics. Peter Nikitin, a Russian activist in Serbia for 7 years, narrowly avoided expulsion last year.
Pritisak na ruski antiratni pokret u Srbiji ima određeni efekat.
The pressure on the Russian anti-war movement in Serbia has had some effect. At the start, we managed to organize protests with several thousand Russian citizens against the war. Now we can't mobilize large numbers because people don't want to risk their residency permits in the only country that welcomes them.
Svojim boravkom u jedinoj zemlji gde su dobrodošli inače.
Ilya meets new clients, a couple, Valera and Alexander. They came to Serbia via Georgia, where they had struggled with administrative obstacles. Belgrade has already won them over. Thanks to Ilya, they found an apartment and enrolled their young daughter in school. Next stop for Alexander, the business registers agency, where his company will be registered. With Ilya's help, the process takes just 20 minutes. At the agency, the creation of businesses by Russian nationals has become routine.
The largest number of foreigners creating companies come from the Russian Federation, followed by citizens of the People's Republic of China.
Since the start of the war in Ukraine, Russian nationals have created 11,000 businesses, mostly in the IT sector. As a result, Serbia has become the third largest European exporter of IT services. 1 year after moving to Serbia, Maria and Ilya now lead a network of associates specializing in corporate law, immigration law, and accounting, all focused on helping Russian citizens settle in Serbia. Their children are enrolled in a Serbian school and already speak the language.
Moving to Serbia was really a great decision for our family. And we're happy here. Finally, we have real summers and almost no snow in winter, which means a lot. Here, people smile, and everyone is happy to see us. Honestly, we hardly read Russian news anymore. We're living our lives here, and there's not much left for us in Russia.
Today in Serbia, Russians live and work within their community, often in close circles. Despite cultural and religious similarities, many have limited contact with the Serbian population. They've recreated a community in their own image, where discussions about Putin remain taboo.